welcome to the Creating Belonging podcast. Today, I'm recording our first guest episode, and I'm really excited that I have Michal Augustini. Michal is what I would say one of the hottest up-and-coming photographers in London right now. So look out for Michal Augustini in London and his photography. But Michal, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself in your words.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Michal. I'm a freelance photographer, music photographer currently. Very proud to say that because it's been just about a year that I've been doing this full time.
Michal, it's awesome to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to be my first guest on the Creating Belonging podcast. And before we get into the hot topic of the day, which is creating belonging, I want to make sure that people can follow you on Instagram and see your amazing work. So how can people find you?
So my handle is augustini.photo, AUGUSTINI.photo. Easy. And my website, the same thing. And just to make things more exciting, I'll be releasing my first debut book in a couple of days / maybe a week. So this will be coming out. So definitely check it out. I will be announcing everything on Instagram and selling through my website.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I know I saw the preview a few weeks back when we were in a meeting, so I'm excited to see the real thing.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, I wanted Michal to join us on the Creating Belonging podcast. I've known Michal for a handful of years. We've worked together, and I know that. Michal grew up in Slovakia and then moved to London, 7 years ago? Was it?
Yeah, 2015.
When I knew Michal, he had been working for an American-based company, albeit global, American-based company, living in London as native of Slovakia. So when we talk about belonging, I had a feeling that Michal might have some interesting stories, kind of in all that intersectionality of his identity that he brings into these different spaces and communities. And one thing, I'm going to jump right into what is kind of my favorite story that we had talked about, which is your name. So your name spelled Michal. I remember when we met, there was discussion like, oh, does he go by Michal or Michal? And then I remember asking you, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't bother me, like whichever. And I found that interesting because a lot of people can be very protective of the pronunciation of their name, right?
Mm.
And so I found that interesting. And then you eventually told me a story, and I'm not gonna repeat it. But the reason I bring it up is because I think about our names, just to give some kind of relation to belonging in this. I think about our names as like one of the things that is like our signature stamp on our identity, because we talk about identity in relation to belonging. And I think our name is like that stamp. It's like the number one thing that is us. It's what people call us on a regular basis. I want to hear your story about kind of growing up and the way that you just name pronunciation, and then even some of the stuff that I think we talked about, name pronunciation
in Slovakia.
Yeah.
So interesting fact is that when I came to London, so many people, out of respect, immediately were asking me like, how do you pronounce your name? And I always introduce myself in English. Hi, I'm Michal. And I never really thought about it. Like I didn't give it a second thought at all. But some people were like, but it's not spelled correctly, right? Like Michal is with E and your name is different. So how do you pronounce it? And I was really hesitant many times to tell people because the pronunciation of my name in different language, it's for people, it's hard to pronounce. My pronunciation of name is Michal. And in Slovakia, it's kind of common name. But the thing is that not that many people call me Michal in Slovakia, because in Slovakia we have nearly each name, not all of them, but my name is specific like that. Has 3 different versions. So the neutral one, Michal, which is on my on a birth certificate, right? But my mom would call me Mishko, which is like a tiny, like imagine like a softer name is Mishko. Your girlfriend would call you Mishko, and people will call you, if you're little, right? They will call you Mishko, and your friends, on the other hand, would like choose a tougher name. So the tougher version of Michal is Misho. So it's so it's Mishko, Michal, Misho. So these are the three names I grew up having, right? I knew I'm Michal, but then not that many people would call me that. It would be either Misha or Mishko. If my mom used Misho, which is a tough little thing, I knew that I did something naughty or something like that. You know, like that puts you on like my mom is calling me like that. And she really hated when my friends came and rang the bell and said, "Hey, is Misha at home?" And my mom hated that because she doesn't like the tougher version of my name. And there are most of the names in Slovakia have those like a softer version and harder version. There are just a few of them that doesn't. Or at school when we were young kids learning English, and we're being taught like, okay, so the basic sentences. So what's your name? My name is, and you say your name. The teachers in Slovakia would kind of transfer your name to English, right? So a name like Michal would be Michael. A name like Tomáš, Slovakian name, would be Tom. Martin would be Martin, but like some of the versions will be slightly different. George, it will be Juraj, and in English would be George. So everybody at school, when we entered the English classroom, it would be, you are pronouncing your name as an English speaking person. So my name every time when I would be using English language would be Michael. So everywhere I went internationally would be like, hey, my name is Michael. I would never even put it into my mouth that I would say, hi, my name is Michal. It just doesn't sound natural to me. So yeah, this is how I presented myself, or always will probably present myself. And people were very curious about that. And then I thought about the history, why I'm saying that, because some people are like, but that's not your name.
Okay, so random thoughts. What if someone called you Mike?
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I have people who call me Mike. Yeah,
Oh,
most like
really?
American people. Yeah, yeah. Some American folks would call me, "Hey, Mike."
Oh, wow. So like no consent, just like decided to shorten your name.
I mean, I'm not sure if there was any. Probably there was this discussion where I said, "You call me whatever you want," and he was like, "Is it okay if I call you Mike?" And I was like, "Fair enough," you know. So I know every time Nick speaks to me, he's like, "Hey, Mike." I was like, "Okay."
uh so I don't know why, I found that fascinating. In the fluidity of acceptance that you have around the way that people pronounce your name. And it's when I've thought about it, I almost like think of it as this gift that your instructors gave you when you were younger, giving you that fluidity of the pronunciation of your name so that you didn't have this defense mechanism come up, right? Like,
Mm.
hey, I'm just gonna go by whatever, and it's cool, as long as it's not offensive, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I have to say, like on the other hand, it made me really be self-conscious when I would be speaking to say, like coming to London, and feeling that respect from others, asking me what my name is, how my name is pronounced and stuff. So then I would be more and more conscious of how other name, because I really haven't thought about it, right? Like I was like, I don't care kind of thing. But then I realized people really do care. So I started caring more about different names, different nationalities. When something is spelled the way that you're like, oh, I have no idea how to pronounce that, I would have the courtesy of like, hey, can you tell me how to really pronounce it, and really make the effort to because I see that this is important for people, and not everyone is like me that like I don't care.
Well, I almost see it. I'm going to transition a little bit and we'll philosophize. I almost see it as related to, gender and pronoun usage,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
so often we assume usage of pronouns, and we assume based on various things, right? I know of, an individual who I used to work with, and her name was Jordan. But because Jordan's probably more typically, or people are more used to Jordan being a male name or a masculine name, that she would often be called he in emails, and so she
Hmm.
actually
Hmm.
she was using pronouns in her signature line before it was like in vogue or recognized. just
Hmm.
because for herself she wanted to clarify, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how, there's the conversation around pronoun usage being like so a part of quote woke culture, being
I think it's very
respectful.
useful. I
Yeah.
think it's very useful that the people use that.
So it's interesting, heightening that awareness that you have of like checking in with people on pronunciation of their name, can be similar and as respectful as checking in on someone's preferred pronouns, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's really, I think it's essential these days to have that because somebody's identity is built on that.
It's just good to check in with people and call people, be respectful and call people what they want to be called.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So I want to transition a little bit and I want to see if I can get another story out of you. Um,
please do.
we talked about the creating belonging model. So in the first episode, I outlined the creating belonging model that exists in my book. We've got essentially belonging sitting at the intersection of authenticity and acceptance. And
Hmm.
then we've got our 4 areas within the creating belonging model. So when we're low on authenticity, low on acceptance, we're in recluse. High on authenticity, low on acceptance, we're in overbearing. If we're high on acceptance, low on authenticity, we're in minimizing. And then when we're high on authenticity, high on acceptance, we're in belonging. And one of the things I prompted you with before today was, hey, what other stories can you think of that you might have sitting in one of those areas of the creating belonging model? So I'm curious, what other experiences
Can
in life
you
can you think of?
coming to London as a Slovakian, coming to the workplace and trying to find my place, I would say, in a workplace, and it's always like a bit of tricky situation, at least for me, because I find myself most of the time like an odd person, like to not the mainstream person, if you see what I mean. Like my generally when I joined the company in London, I remember coming to the office and I did not have like suddenly start feeling the vibe of the office, right? Like, and one of the main things in the office was sports, football, like UK, right? Football. What's your team? Who you're a fan? Like, I was like, no idea. Are you Arsenal? Are you Tottenham? Are you this? I was like, nope, I'm not in football. And my question back is like, what kind of music do you listen to? And they were like, oh yeah, all sorts, blah blah. I was like, what kind of concerts do you go to? Not that many people went to concerts, so I found myself in this kind of odd spot where most of the people were, following sports, following these things, and you want to try to kind of belong, right? You try to kind of merge into that, so you're trying to find these things. But I remember that on my first lunch on the first day where everybody was there and it's like, okay, we have this football club going on, we're all playing football. And I was like, great. Good for you guys, and they were all expecting me to be like, yeah, let's play football. I was like, nope, thank you. But I found myself belonging into that group of doing, yoga classes and at work. It was very, very different to the kind of mainstream everyone in the office what they were doing, and sometimes I found it a little bit difficult, but not that, and I was like, you know what, I need to find my tribe somewhere else. Work is work. I work in this environment. I get along with people. This is not about if I like football or not. It's about the work we're doing. Yeah.
You started working at that organization 4 years before we worked together.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it was a very different environment at that point in time. I'm curious. So where would you say, like at work, because I think a lot of the conversations our listeners are probably looking for is some of those work related, like how do we
Hmm.
create more belonging at work?
Yeah.
So if you were to think about where you sat in that moment, the way that you described it, like high or low on authenticity, high or low on acceptance, to then kind of plot yourself, where would you say you?
I think it was I never hidden my authenticity. I would say, I was authentic, but I
Mhm.
definitely was kind of I was playing the other people's game. So if they were talking about football, I started to kind of be interested in not necessarily football, but I would be like, oh, tell me more, or what is it? And so try to be interested in others and how what the tribe was about. But I knew I'm not interested in specifically football, right? But like I was
Hmm.
interested in, okay, why are you having this conversation? Who is who? You're trying to get to know other people. So I'm always curious, asking questions about that. So that this is where I found myself. But like another example that I can think of, and I guess that's a really interesting conversation to compare with your experience as well. But I remember when I came to London, I made a life decision that I will stop drinking. I will stop pause alcohol. Several reasons, health reasons, stuff like that. But the what is the best way how to get to know your colleagues? You have to go out and drink, right?
Hmm.
That's the kind of like norm everywhere, I feel like. Specifically UK or in Slovakia, everybody goes out, has a beer and stuff. And I would definitely be at the bar ordering soda and lime just to pretend I'm drinking gin and tonic, right?
Hmm.
Because I didn't want to have the conversation of why are you not drinking? Because I had those conversations so many times at the beginning when I came here, and they're like, "Oh my God, why are you not drinking? Why are you doing it?" And it's just like, I don't get like why are you so interested if I'm drinking or not? And especially like we're going out at work occasions and people are getting sorry for the for the thing but shit faced, right? Like at the company expense or something. But so this is where I found myself that I was hiding my identity. I was many times not presenting who I was because it just becomes like an unnecessary conversation. But many times I have to say, then more and more I get confident about it. I was just like, I'm not drinking. That's it. Dot. Like I don't need to explain myself to people. Like so that I would say was one of the aspects where I felt like I was just trying to kind of belong, but I had to kind of fake, that I'm holding a different drink that I was really holding.
It's an interesting one. A while back worked for a UK based company. And so like I can confirm the drinking culture is real in London. Um, and it's an interesting dynamic because the balance of like I don't want to tell people like, hey, look, you can't drink, you can't go out, you can't do what you enjoy. But also in the context of work, in like how are you making sure that others are comfortable and feel like they belong in that moment and in that place. It's an interesting shift because I'm assuming that in general you'd be comfortable going out to the pub. It shifts when like, what are you drinking? Why aren't you drinking? I'm now going to interrogate you about your drinking habits.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. That's why I loved when we even spoke about like team building activities. I don't find like team building going out to a bar and having an open check there. I don't find this as a team building activity. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I literally like from a professional standpoint of view, and me, like we always found like activities that would include everyone, that would somehow um go for the fact that not everybody needs to drink or not everybody needs to be the person who wants to go out and having a activity at the bar or something, right? So it's always finding what is the right activity so you can include everyone in there, so you can create small groups, and you do it at work, and find some really good activities that are connecting people rather than just like, yeah, go ahead and it will sort itself out, right? Like people will just bond. Yeah, yeah. But then next day you come to work and you see like, yeah, 10 people bonded, but the other, I don't know, 50 around didn't because they had to leave because of kids or they, like all sort of
Mm-hmm.
things. But then you can see how the kind of groups were created at work, that you were like, okay, these are the buddies, this is the core group, or these are the old people who were there for ages. If you didn't go with what they were interested in or what they were doing, then you were not included in that club, if you see what I mean.
And I think it's, you know, a lot of the what we have to think about is the difference between a sanctioned work event, you know, like this is team building, this is how we will get to know each other, versus like a few people from work going out and having, you know, like having a social life outside of work with coworkers, right? And then, you know, depending on what that relationship is at work, the important, you know, power dynamics with those people, whether that's appropriate or inappropriate. But it's definitely something I think to think about. You know, I talk about in the book, my story about belonging is, and I talk about it in the opening episode. So this is a great segue from that, in designing events, designing spaces where everyone feels welcome and like it was made for them. I think that's when we when we really push to the height of belonging for folks, because it sounds like on the average day you weren't like deep in recluse because you felt like you could show up as yourself, and you weren't in overbearing because you weren't kind of like disrespecting others or, you know, applying your values to them. And then conversely, you weren't minimizing because you were attempting to engage at least on a surface level in things that they were interested in,
Yeah.
right? So it's like it what I'm thinking of, I had a conversation with someone yesterday and they were struggling with the creating belonging model because they're like, well, isn't there kind of like a spectrum? Like, I'm not just all recluse or I'm not all overbearing. And I agree with you. Like, we're not 100% anything ever. So, you know, it sounds like you were like in the middle, you know, up into belonging, not like super high in belonging, but like not in a bad place.
Yeah, and I think it's also, if you look at it through timeline, I would say it changes a lot. You know, you're going
Mm-hmm.
through. I visualize it as you're going through stages, or you can go through one stage, you go into another, and so on. I think the problem is when you get stuck in one.
I've always experienced you as very authentic and very open and honest, and appreciate that. And I think to your comments about it, you know, that belonging shifting or changing. I think if we relate it to team development and we understand that when a team changes, when they add people, when they lose people, the dynamics of that team has to go back to the beginning and go back through those stages of development. And there's probably, I don't know, I love the conversation thinking about belonging because there's probably also an impact too, but where we sit in the creating belonging model when the dynamics of the group change. So I can think of, if I reflect on our experience together when I joined the organization that we worked in, you know, you had been through multiple iterations of that organization. And I can even see an evolution of, you know, when it comes to work product, quality of work. Tire Team was remote, sitting in literally different parts of the world. And I can almost see an evolution of you in our work together and kind of seeing where you sit in, you know, leaning back into that belonging, at least within our immediate team. I'm curious
Yeah.
if you feel that or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I always felt that it was very inclusive, and especially in our team, we had really open conversations. We knew everybody's was different in ways and respected that. I remember we had a colleague who was more, quiet, but I'm talkative a lot, so in my head I was like, okay, just hold on a second, give the space to others so that we are a team, right? Like you and I, we could chat for hours, right? And there were people who would just be listening on mute, and then you're like, okay, so let's give them the spotlight for a bit. I had to like consciously make that, but it's all about awareness, right? Awareness of others, awareness of others' needs, and being very respectful. And I felt that that respect was there.
So number one, I swear that this podcast is not just like a celebration of the teams that I've worked on. Just for everyone. Uh,
Yeah.
but what I would say, what's interesting about that team in particular, because there was, I think the fact that regardless of the pandemic, we would have been remote anyway. But
Mm.
then, you know, lay the pandemic on top of that. And for a lot of the time that we worked together, and it almost seems like where some people think that remote work makes belonging and team building harder. I almost felt
Hmm.
like in our case, because we were all very different, like I genuinely enjoy hanging out with everyone on the team, but I think it would be very different if we were all co-located, right? Because we are so different that we would still like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like it would be different. So anyway, I like, it's this recognition that I have that when done right, creating belonging in teams can actually be helped by that distance.
Yeah, yeah, in some ways, definitely. And I would like on the flip coin, I would say that it can, depending on the mix of the team, right? We were one mix of the team, but I can imagine that in other teams it might be the right opposite.
So I think the moral of the story is whether in person or virtual, there are elements that can promote belonging or elements that can destroy belonging. It's understanding the environment that you're working in and then also being conscious to intentional. I use the word intentional so much, being intentional about what we're creating within
Yeah.
those teams.
Also, if I may add just one thing that I
Yeah.
remember when we were doing the insights discovery thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when we discovered our team's colors, right? It gives you, I'm a visual person, it gave me so much sense. Suddenly be like, okay, this person blue energy, this person green energy, this person, yeah, we have the same. So suddenly you understood the mix. At least for me, it was like an eye-opening thing of like, I had a feeling about these things, but when you're remote and you just have chats for an hour with someone, you don't necessarily know everything. But
Mm-hmm.
those tools are very helpful to then understand that mix because you'll be like, oh, somebody's more analytical, somebody's more probably introverted or focused on details, blah blah. So you suddenly like, okay, you can respect that person in that way and give them the opportunity to shine in different situations than you would normally do if you did not have that information.
I love those types of assessments. And I think there's some people love them, some people hate them, some people are in the middle. And I think that, as long as we understand that we are more than a set of four colors or one color, we're more than that. And we're more than what can be described in some descriptive profile. When we understand that, but we use them as a tool to understand our differences and to be able to
Mm.
appreciate those differences and how we show up. I love insights discovery is absolutely my favorite tool of all of those, but I think they all have their merits. And I think I'm biased because I've been facilitating insights discovery for several years.
Yeah, but I guess it's about it's like a tool, right? Like it's not revealing any super secrets. It's just a tool, like a screwdriver, right? Like you can use it in very different ways, and I think those tools are helpful, right? They can take that information, it's going to help you. You know, it's not putting people in a box. It's not doing that. It's just giving you some additional information that you can use to your advantage and to others people advantage to promote belonging, to create the environment that accepts everyone for who they are and promotes their strengths.
It's all about pushing into acceptance, which is understanding or working to understand others and accepting them for who they are, accepting that not everyone's like us, and accepting them even if there are things that we don't understand about them. That's one of the messages that I want this work to get out so much, because I think it's something that's undervalued.
100%, 100%.
Well, I think that's a good note for us to close on. Michael, I want to thank you so much for being my first podcast guest on the Creating Belonging podcast. We'll be releasing new episodes every 2 weeks. Our final episode will be a LinkedIn Live, which then we will repackage and publish as the final podcast. So Michael, I'm going to get that on your calendar because I'm going to have an assortment of guests across
Cool.
the podcast, and would love for you to join us in that final discussion for the season anyway. So
Amazing, amazing. Looking forward to that.
thank you. And Michael's also a new father, so I hope you go take a nap.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you can hear that, but my kid is screaming in the background. So
We can't hear it.
I'm going to. That's kind of my duty calling. But yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you
I
for
love
having
it.
me. Pleasure to be on our podcast.